Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost Here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are in the world. This is Tracy Murda on behalf of Richard Jacobs here at Future Tech Podcast. Today I have an amazing guest with me, Danny Cabrera, the CEO and co-founder of BioBots. Danny, thank you so much for joining me and giving me some of your time today.
Absolutely, Tracy. Thank you for having me.
Now, BioBots is an absolutely incredible company. Why don't you start off and tell me a little bit about yourself and how you really dove into 3D printing? What got you started in this industry?
Sure. Well, first of all, let's start off. BioBots is to start up. We're building 3D printers that can print living tissues made out of human cells and other biocompatible materials. And the way I got into this was, this was really a project that spun out of undergraduate research that I was working on with a friend of mine, and having been doing a lot of research throughout undergrad and totally biology research, and totally buying into the idea that biology was going to be the technology of the future, if it's not already. We use biology to make lots of useful products, lots of great medicines that save lives, and it's what we use to feed ourselves. So having totally bought into that idea that the applications for biology were only going to be increasing over time, I started thinking about what were the limitations, what were some of the things that were stopping us from really designing and engineering living things today. And coming from a computer science background, applying that to biology, one of the things that sort of instantly struck me was how manual biology was. For being the most sophisticated technology that we have, we really do it in a fairly primitive way, mainly having graduate students and postdocs running around and moving little tiny volumes of liquid in and out of tiny plastic tubes by hand. So I thought that there must be some way to bring some more automation to the field. That was one of the challenges. And the second was that most of biology to date has been done on flat, two-dimensional petri dishes. So these are cells that are cultured on flat surfaces, and they exist in two-dimensional space. And the world is not a two-dimensional place; it's really a three-dimensional place. And cells inside of our bodies and inside of pretty much every other living thing interact with each other in 3D space. So the fact that we've been using these sort of primitive models for over 100 years has really only been limiting our ability to understand and build more useful living things. So started thinking about a tool that could sort of marry those two things. And I was working with a buddy of mine who was building a 3D printer that could print living cells. And I sort of instantly thought that could solve both the problems, or at least begin to address them. 3D printer is a digital fabrication tool that you interface with using your computer, literally lines of code. So you can begin to get rid of some of that manual error. It's a robot. So it'll do the same thing over and over again every time. And second, by being a 3D printer, it allows you to really build three-dimensional living things and addresses the issue of flat or two-dimensional tissue cultures that we've been dealing with. So I thought it was a great tool that could really have the promise to reinvent the stack of tools or the infrastructure that we have for doing biology today, and really bring it closer to the types of tools, the types of fabrication technologies that we're used to in the 21st century.
Let's talk a little bit more about you and what really let you know that this was the right area or field of business for you.
I don't know if there was necessarily an aha moment. I think, like I said, I bought into the idea that biology was, the most significant, the most interesting, definitely the biggest mystery that we have today that we could explore and use to solve all of mankind's problems, or as many of them as you could definitely think of, since we're living things ourselves. And I wanted to, for a long time, I wanted to spend time understanding biology, building models that allow us to design and engineer it. And this is just a step in that direction. I'm not saying that it's necessarily the end all be all. There's definitely a lot of room to grow within this space, and it's a small sort of new company. We're still definitely trying to figure out the best ways for us to move forward and think about the types of tools, the type of company that we're becoming.
So, Danny, tell me about the technology that BioBots uses, and especially the BioBot 1 3D printer. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, so the first. At this point, it's really our second generation device. Uses it looks like a traditional 3D printer, and has a print head that moves in 3 axes, X, Y, and Z. And that print head, instead of being filled with plastic or some sort of resin, in our devices is filled with a mixture of living cells and different biocompatible materials. And it uses a pneumatic system, so basically compressed air, to push that material out of a nozzle and deposit it in 3-dimensional space. And there are a number of different ways, a number of different methods that we use to turn that material from liquid into a solid without killing all of the cells. They involve using light, shining lights on the material to turn it from liquid to a solid. There are also chemical methods and thermal methods that we use for cross-linking. But when it's done printing, you basically have a construct or a 3-dimensional object that contains cells inside of it. And culturing that over the course of days, weeks, or months allows the cells to grow and form and develop into a tissue that scientists can use to understand how tissues form, and also more general principles about biology, and also use those tissues for various different applications, ranging from using them to test new drugs in a much more realistic setting and sort of reduce the risk of clinical trials. Also, some of these are being used to fabricate medical devices that are going into animals and eventually will be going into people. And more generally, we see it as a way for scientists to begin building, more than anything, designing and building 3-dimensional living things, where that's been impossible or a major challenge in the past.
So how far off do you see, or do you feel that it is that we'll be able to use this type of technology actually in humans?
Well, I mean, it's been used in humans as one-offs, certainly, at different points in times, and the technology is developing. I think the most critical challenge is the biology, really understanding how living things are interacting. When you implant something into a human, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen until you do it. So, I mean, there are going to be one-off cases, or there are already one-off use cases for this stuff. As far as when they're going to be FDA-approved products, I don't have a date, and I don't fully know. We're really in the business of building the tools, and our customers are the ones who are using those tools to build really amazing and incredible products, and we're kind of here along the way to support them.
So that brings up an interesting question. When you say customers, who are we talking about? Who is this sort of technology, the 3D, BioBot printing? Who's that available to, realistically?
I mean, it's scientists, people who have access to labs where they can grow their own cells, potentially, and test living things. So it's scientists that have access to labs. And there are people in pharma companies and medical device companies, in academic institutions, cosmetics companies, and agriculture. I mean, it's basically anybody who's doing any life science related work. They can use tools, and a large part of them are.
Are there any industries in particular that you see benefiting from this 3D printing?
I mean, like I said, any industry that's touched by living things can benefit from it. To date, I think definitely on the pharmaceutical side, there's been the pharmaceutical industry just has a really pressing need to bring down the cost of drug development. And any tool that offers them more realistic models for testing drugs, preclinical trials, is valuable to them. So there's definitely a big financial incentive on that side today. But I think, more generally speaking, these our tools, our products are products that are applicable and useful to anybody or any company, any industry that touches living things.
What are some of the current challenges or limitations of this sort of technology, the bio 3D printing?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. What are some of the current limitations, or maybe a better word is challenges, that you're facing with the bio 3D printing?
Yeah, I think, definitely without a doubt the biggest challenge that our customers face is understanding the biology. We can build great robots that do the same exact thing every time, that are very precise, and that do exactly create exactly what's designed on a computer. But what happens after that, or how the biology works, there really aren't great models for that right now, and our understanding of the biology is extremely limited. So we're at this. Our tools are enabling the scientists to do a lot of the basic research and begin to understand and really build some more predictive power into the biology. But at this point, it's really a huge mystery.
So, Danny, when it comes to the benefits for companies and scientists and things like that using this technology, what are we talking about are some of the biggest benefits? Is it eventually cost saving, being able to test and work with tissues and things like that? What exactly are they looking for?
There are major cost savings versus doing things by hand, because you get repeatability out of these systems, which is paramount importance. There's also there's just an added benefit of being able to do things in 3D, which ends up being a lot better mimic of the human body than a flat two-dimensional model. So in that case, you can call that cost savings, you can call it time savings, you can call it whatever you like. And I think bigger picture-wise, this is the world knows this is coming. We are moving towards automating biology and having much more sophisticated ways of doing biology. And this is the first step in a major reform in the stack of tools that we use to do biology.
So if you would, give me an idea or an example of something that the 3D bioprinter could make, and what kind of time are you looking at on creating something in whole?
Yeah, sure. So I can just walk you through one of our customers.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yes, Alika Demaseni is a professor at Harvard, and he was one of our first customers. And he has a student working on a project to build basically a three-dimensional tissue model for thrombosis. Basic fibrosis model that could be that was more realistic than a flat dimensional tissue culture, and even more than that, more realistic than for example, a rat, which is the workhorse in a lot of these models. And you could use this 3D tissue model to then test new drugs for thrombosis or for fibrosis in general, and figure out what's going to work best and what's going to be non-toxic to humans. As your test synthesis is going to be built out of human cells. So over the course of a few months, the student was able to quickly design and iterate on a 3D tissue model that was a mixture of biomaterials and living human cells to create really the first thrombosis on a chip model, which is basically a small device about the size of your pinky that is built out of human cells and mimics thrombosis in humans. So that's an example of some of the things that people are doing, trying to build tissues that mimic the function of the human body, that are entirely built entirely of the human cells, meaning not animal cells, and that you can use to test new compounds, new drugs, or new biologies. And that's happening now. That's a published paper that anybody can access. And
that's incredible. So you're probably going to laugh at me when I ask this, but if you can, describe to me what a finished product from the the printer would look like? Like, I'm thinking of, like you see it on TV shows and all of these things. I mean, are these finished products really looking like organs or tissues, or, what are we kind of looking at from a realistic standpoint?
Right. Yes. I mean, nobody really knows the best way to build a fully functioning, complicated organ just yet. So they don't look like hearts. People are building small pieces of tissue. Like I was saying, it's something that probably wouldn't look like much if you're looking at it with the naked eye. But if you're looking at it under the microscope, and these are very complex three-dimensional tissues that have multiple different cell types interacting in something that looks maybe not 100% like the native tissue, but very similar. So from the things that people are printing, generally speaking, are fairly small, on the orders of a few millimeters or centimeters, and but they function in ways that are very complex.
Okay. That helps, and that totally changes my what I had going on inside my head. I know that for sure. So, Danny, what are some of the ultimate goals of BioBots?
Yeah, I mean, I think really the ultimate goal of BioBots is to help uncover this mystery, uncover the mystery of life, and begin to use life, design life, and engineer life in ways that are useful for humans. And if you look around the room right now, you're probably in a room that has a door. Humans are really great at building buildings and doors and computers or phones like the ones we're talking on. But really, the most sophisticated thing in the room that you're sitting in is yourself. It's life. It's something that's alive, and we have no idea how that technology works. We don't really know how to build living things. Technology that's been evolving over the course of billions of years, and we're just now beginning to scratch the surface of how it works. So we really hope that by having tools that allow us to precisely design and engineer living things, we'll be able to and our customers will be able to address some of humanity's greatest challenges. Things like helping us eliminate disease, or eliminate the organ waiting list, or even help remediate the environment so we can stay living on Earth for as long as possible, or even help us engineer ourselves so that we can live in outer space and potentially in other planets. So that's sort of what we see the applications, or the bigger visions and the bigger goals, or some of the reasons why we're doing this.
I love it. Are there any final thoughts that you could share with our listeners on BioBots and just in general the technology of 3D printing and where it's going?
Yeah, I mean, so I think bioprinting oftentimes gets looped into this bigger 3D printing phenomenon that's been taking over the world for the last couple of years. And in many ways it is part of it, but in other ways it's just a little bit different. 3D bioprinting or bioprinting is it's a great tool for gaining control over geometries out of living things, and how we use that. And how we use that to understand how life works is still developing, and we're still trying to figure that out. But we're definitely excited to be at the early stages of it and providing, building tools for great scientists who are in their own small ways figuring out some of the deepest mysteries surrounding life, and then using them to help people live longer, healthier, better lives.
And Danny, for someone who's looking for more information on BioBots, where is a good place to grab some information and maybe contact your organization?
I mean, well, definitely the best place is on our website. We have a section. It's actually just buildwithlife.com. We basically have open sourced or opened up, made public a lot of our research, and are trying to communicate not just to scientists how they can use these tools and some of the applications, but to the general public, what are some of where's this technology really at, and what are some of the applications today, and even some ways that you can get involved. So I would say the best way to begin is buildwithlife.com, and that'll lead you straight to our website. From there, the world's your oyster.
I love it. Well, Danny, thank you so much for being my guest today. Danny Cabrera, CEO and founder of BioBots. I really appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing where this all takes you and continuing on this journey with you all.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you for having me, and have a great rest of the day.
All right. Thanks so much, Danny. Have a good one.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.